Hi, welcome to Designs with Paper. I'm Jenny. On today's card project, I will be doing a little bit of shading with some Prismacolor pencils. So stick around. Thanks for stopping by. Hi, today I am stamping up this honeybee stamp set called Car Show. And I'm going to use a couple different images. The first one is this old classic car down at the bottom. To me, it looks a little bit like a Thunderbird. I don't know that much about cars. But I'm stamping it on a piece of Nina Solar White 80 pound that is cut 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I've put it inside my Misty landscape style. The car is a little bit long. It takes up better space proportionally to me for this card landscape. And I stamped it with that Simon Says stamp intense black ink. And I'm using my rag to put some pressure through that Misty lid onto that stamped image. And I'm going to stamp it twice because I want those tires and the back seat of that car to really be a deep black. So I'm going to ink the stamp up again, and I'm going to close the lid, and I'm going to put a little bit more pressure on it, especially on the seat and the tires. And I use that rag so that my fingers will slide nice and smooth across the Misty lid. Now I am going to make you car sick while I color this car. Haha. I just turn the paper all over inside out and upside down and backwards. But I'm using Prismacolor pencils. And I picked 2 colors of red. And when I was all done, I kind of wished I had used a gray or a blue for the shading. Because while the colors I chose blended really well, there wasn't a huge difference between the shadows and the highlights. So just something to think about. You'll notice I'm holding my pencil like 1/3 of the way up the barrel, and I have a really sharp pencil to color with. And with color pencils, the trick is to do many layers that are very light pressure. So I just go back and forth. I use the dark color where I think the shadows would be and the light color to blend it all out. And I go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it blends beautifully. The cool thing with color pencils is that you can blend them out with each other like I'm doing here. You can use a blender pencil to blend them out, or you can use Gamsol and a paper stump. And you get a really smooth blend, almost like Copic markers if you use the Gamsol. Usually when I'm using colored pencils, I really want that pencil coloring look. I want the texture. I want the coloring lines that you get from colored pencil. It's a different look entirely. But I just keep moving the paper around and putting the pencil in at different angles. If you color in the same direction over and over again, you don't get pigment down in all of the grooves of the paper. And I'm just going to go back and forth, putting the dark color into the shadows and pulling it out with that lighter color. And it really does blend nice. And I like how it turned out. I just wish I had a little bit more depth and contrast between the shadows and the highlight. I don't know if this car is supposed to be a convertible, but I decided that it was. So I used 2 colors of an off-white, kind of a linen white, to color the roof, and just kind of blended them together. And also Prisma has this metallic silver pencil, and so I used that to color all the chrome. And I suppose that could be a white stripe, but I decided it was a chrome stripe or a chrome piece. And it doesn't show up very metallic in the pictures or in the video, but it looks really cool on the card itself. So I just colored all of the chrome, the bumper, the grille, the detail on the side, the mirror. I just colored those all with that silver metallic pencil. I did pull out a dark gray to add a little bit of depth to the wheels. And then I colored the rest of the wheel in with that chrome. And then I even added a little bit of a white highlight on one wheel, on one wheel side, just to kind of give it a little bit of a highlight. For the reflector lights on the front and the back, I used a kind of a burnt orange color, just so that they have that kind of reddish orange lens cover color. I don't know what the right word is. And I used a light blue for the headlights. Now when I'm done coloring, I'm going to put this back in my Misty and stamp it again. When you use colored pencil, the wax kind of dulls down those stamp lines, and I really wanted them to be, dark, deep black stamp lines. So I stamped over it again. You have to be careful because the ink doesn't dry on that waxy paper very fast, so you have to put it clear out of the way and not run your hands over it. So for the second card, I've used this kind of sporty car, and I picked some orange colors for this because of my brother. So a few years ago, my brother had a Mustang, and it was orange. And I know this car is not a Mustang, but it was a sports car, and so I went with it. And anyway, he had this orange Mustang, and he called it the Tang Stang. And my kids didn't know what Tang was. They're like, what is Tang? And so I went to the grocery store, and I picked up a little package of Tang powder, and I mixed Tang for my kids to try. And okay, as an adult, it's kind of gross. I did not like that at all. I don't know that my kids liked it either, but dang, it's basically sugar water, so they drank it anyway. But that is not good. How did we drink that as kids, and how did astronauts drink that? That was just gross. I don't even know. Anyway, back to the Tang Stang. So anyway, I colored this card to kind of mimic or to pay homage to my brother's Tang Mustang. And I really like, with the oranges, the contrast. So I have a three-color blend this time, and I'm using a darker color in the shadows, and a mid-tone color to drag those shadows out, and then a third lighter color to fill in the highlight. And I'm just going back and forth, not overcoloring the same place, not coloring in the same order, just back and forth, back and forth. I, pick up the dark pencil, color in the shadows, pick up the medium pencil, drag those shadows out, pick up the lighter pencil, and fill in the highlight. And the same thing, I've got sharp pencils, and I'm holding my pencil a third to half the way up the barrel so that I don't have a lot of pressure, and so that I can add lots of layers to the paper and really get the pigment down into all of the tooth of that paper. And it really makes it look cool. I really like how this orange one turned out. There's lots of contrast in it. I used the same burnt orange for the reflector blinker lights, and the same silver pencil for all of the chrome work. I don't think I put any of the gray in the tires on this one, and I added some blue to the windows to kind of give it that glass reflective kind of a look. But yeah, just kind of adding some more shadows in, adding some more highlights in, adding the blue to the window. And I don't know that it really showed up all that well, and it may not really have been worth it, but I did it. So this car as well, I stamped again with the black ink so that I could get that nice, crisp, dark image. And I put it off to the side. I didn't want to accidentally drive my hand through it. Now I have a piece of black cardstock. It is 8.5 by 11, and I cut it at 5.5. And my camera is going to wig out for the next couple minutes because the black paper and everything else is just too much for it, I guess. But I scored these card bases at 4 1/4. So they made landscape, they're top folding landscape cards. And I'm using my scoreboard and my Teflon bone folder to get those the score lines in. Now when I go to fold these over, one of them I did not line it up very well when I folded it. So I just turned it inside out and folded it the other way, and it was perfect. And I'm using my bone folder to really burnish that crease so that the card lays nice and flat. It doesn't pop up and flop around. Now in here you're going to see that card not really line up very well, so it's got two sides. Turn it over. Do it again. I decided that I wanted the car panels to have a little bit of a border. So I pulled out my Cuttlebug and the Lawn Fawn large stitch rectangle dies. For some reason, that is a tongue twister for me. And I used the largest die in that set to cut these card panels down. I kind of thought that black border would look really cool. And here's my Cuttlebug, my trusty little Cuttlebug that I've had forever and ever and ever. And every time I think about it, you know, it feels like it's dying and maybe I need to get a new one. It just comes back to life, and I don't know. I think it's going to outlive me. It just keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. Anyway, I cut both panels down with the same die so that they would have the same 1/4 inch border around the card base. I used a little bit of washi tape to hold that die in place so it wouldn't move around or cut crooked. And I put that card panel down on a piece of scrap paper just in case the ink wasn't quite dry on the front. And then I centered it in the middle of that card base. Now there is a companion set to this car show stamp set called You're a Classic, and it's a sentiment set. So once I get these card bases, or the card panels down on the bases, I'm going to find a couple of scrap pieces of black cardstock in my stash right here on my desk. I have a little, oh, sorry, before I did that, so I have a piece of scrap printer paper. It came out of the printer. There's something on one side, but it's like light pink and you can't see it. So I just tape it to the inside of my card base so that I have somewhere to write a message. And then I pull my scrap tray out from underneath my computer and found 2 little pieces of black cardstock that I can stamp some sentiments on from the It's a Classic stamp set. The cool thing about this stamp set is it has 2-part stamps, or 2-part sentiments. So you could stamp one on the outside and one on the inside, or one on the top and one on the bottom. But I decided I wanted to heat emboss these with white embossing powder. So I lined up the stamp and got it attached to the MISTI lid. And then I used my anti-static powder bag to dust up that paper. You don't want to have any oils or anything from your hands on the paper, or the embossing powder will stick to it. Now I stamped it with Versamark ink, and Versamark is a very sticky clear ink that stays wet for a while. So I had time to stamp both sentiment strips before I had to worry about getting the embossing powder on the paper. So there I've got that second sentiment stamped down. I'm going to push my MISTI out of the way and pull out my embossing powder. And I have my embossing powder in this pencil box I picked up at, I think it was Office Depot. And true story, I have no idea what kind of embossing powder is in there. I know it's fine detail because I use it for sentiments, but I don't know if it's Stampin' Up. I don't know if it's Hero Art. I don't know if it's Simon Says. It's white. I don't know. I am using my Wagner heat gun, and it is super hot. So I'm using my reverse clamp tweezers to hold that paper in place because it was burning my fingers. And once I get that all heat set, I move everything out of the way and bring my cards back in. And I want to put this on the bottom underneath those cards to kind of ground it in. So I'm going to wipe that extra the extra powder from the embossing bag off. And I decided to cut this at the right hand side at kind of a diagonal angle just to give it a little bit of interest. And then I pulled out my Big Mama, my 3M foam tape from Amazon. And the tape width itself is wider than that sentiment strip. So I just cut it in half with a pair of non-stick scissors and put one piece on each sentiment strip. And I want to add this to the bottom of the card under that card, but I want to line it up on the left-hand side with the card base, not just the white card panel. So I scooted it all the way to the edge to kind of give it a little bit of a grounding effect. It kind of pulls everything together. And for the red one, I cut the opposite end. I cut the left end and then attached it to the right side of the card base, but doing the same thing. I just lined it up at the edge of the card base so that it would kind of ground all those elements together. And now looking at that, it doesn't look like it went on very straight, but whatever. So I picked the companion sentiment for both of these cards. And the first card in my MISTI is the red sports car, I think. Yep, it says, "You're not old" on the front. So I picked the companion sentiment that says, "You're a classic." And I lined that up on my card, and it was sticking to my fingers like crazy. It was kind of weird. And I put it in my Misty. And I'm using that intense black ink again. And I'm using my Misty so that I can stamp it more than one time if I need to. I don't want to have to worry about trying to line up letters. That's just not worth it. So I just give it a little bit of pressure. And it's a fine line stamp, so you don't want to push too hard because it'll blur out the letters. And I decided I wanted it a little bit darker, so I stamped it again. And just give it a little bit more pressure with my fingers. So there you go. That one says, "You're not old, you're a classic." And this one that's orange has on the front, cruising to your, and on the inside I wrote I stamped the birthday sentiment. I decided I was going to send this to my nephew for his birthday. So I wrote, "Happy 16th birthday," put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, put it in the mail, and then realized he turned 17. I don't know. I do weird things like that. One time I sent a card to my sister-in-law without putting anything on the inside. Totally mailed her a blank card. Happy birthday. So there we go. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you will give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you next time.